Episode 54 of the Interpretation Station is Call to Order. Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of the Interpretation Station with me, your host, Roland Pallaret. Conference Interpreting's answer to Scotty Kilmer. At least that's what it says on my LinkedIn profile page. So it must be true, right? Anyway, today's episode is especially for my Russian-speaking followers, viewers. It's going to be based on a text that I posted in the group page a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's a text about, it was delivered at the Human Rights Council, statement by the Russian Federation during a dialogue with the High Commissioner on the report on accountability, подотчетность. You can see that, very important word that, by the way, to know from Russian into English, very important word, in the Occupied Palestinian Territories, the OPT. So if you're in a meeting specifically on that subject, you can pretty quickly move straight into the acronym, by the way, saying the OPT. Just as a hint for you. At the 46th session of the Human Rights Council, and the date of this was the 24th of February. So I'll just share the screen with you now. Okay, so you should be able to see that clearly. That's that word, подотчетность. Remember that word. If nothing else from today's episode, remember подотчетность. Okay, so here we have it. And let's take you then through my notes, all right, that I made here. So starting off with, okay, содержательный доклад. So, you know, the classic solution here for содержательный, you know, comprehensive. You can't go wrong with comprehensive. If you want to try a couple of alternatives, I guess you could say in-depth or detailed, but comprehensive, I think, is the most straightforward way of doing that. Now, here you have the actual name of the report, Ensuring Accountability and Justice. And again, отправление правосудия. Again, it's good to know that's just justice, you know, because you've got two long, clunky Russian words there that can all be synthesized into just justice. The trick, of course, is recognize when it comes up later, when it's mentioned again, knowing that you can just say justice for отправление правосудия. So it gets used quite a lot, that concept, generally, you know, in these legal committees and the various treaty bodies and so on. And here I give you, of course, so I put OPT with a tick, meaning that, yes, you can use that acronym, the OPT, for the Occupied Palestinian Territory. Okay, now this is a classic sort of Russian paragraph starter. Обеспокоенность вызывают. Okay, so rather than going for we, you know, I'm always a bit, you know, I try and avoid weeing when I can. I wish my dog would. I like to say a cause for concern is. It's a nice neutral way of starting it, and it sounds quite nice in English. Okay, a cause for concern is, and then all right, представление данные. So you know, the представление is pretty much implicit in the meaning, you know, of the data, the information in the report. So you could just skip that. You know, you sit and say a cause for concern is the данные, information or data, etc. And he talks about, well, I haven't highlighted it here, but I guess for непрекращающихся случаи, you know, the ongoing cases of violations. Then I've given you the acronym here, международного гуманитарного права. So you can just say IHL, International Humanitarian Law. That's an important acronym to know that you can use. Okay. Перспективе сказывается на перспективах достижения устойчивого мира. Okay, so perspectiva, I think in English we sooner say prospects as opposed to perspective. And they often, you know, perspective, often hear when they talk about countries having that are wanting you to join, like the EU, potential EU candidate states, their European perspective. That's one time when you would use perspective, but I think generally it's prospects sounds better in English. Устойчивого мира, so I've put an asterisk here, so lasting peace. So as I say here next to the asterisk, lasting peace is better than sustainable peace. Now, either are fine, but yeah, I think with peace, with that collocation, lasting is better, and it's also doesn't, it's easier to say, I think, than sustainable. Lasting 2 syllables, sustainable 4 syllables. Okay, so then we've got, there's quite a bit of legal vocab in this text. Okay, so it's important to get this sort of vocab. Don't play around with it too much and just get it right. Now here, this is an important, term in Russian, привлечению к ответственности, which again in English can pretty much just be synthesized to prosecute. And I like prosecute because obviously the pr in the привлечению, that sort of triggers in my mind the pr in prosecute. So I find it's an easy one to just shift to. And again, prosecute, you got one word as opposed to, привлечение к ответственности, 3. Okay. Vinovnych, so I would usually go for perpetrators. I've given you 2 options here. You could say the culprits as well. I think culprits is a lower register, perpetrators higher register, but it's always, it's good to have culprits just as an alternative sometimes. And this, again, this is a very common Russian phrase when talking about incidents. Vinovных в том числе причастных к инцидентам. So those involved, причастные, those involved in the incidents. Again, another sort of technical expression here, чрезмерным применением силы, excessive use of force. Again, don't really play around with that too much. Вне контекста военных действий, you could say here the out with the context of military action. Okay, the next paragraph, again, a very common Russian sort of paragraph starter, разделяем выводы. Again, you don't really need to do anything major with this. Just when I hear разделяем, I just say we share the findings. Okay, findings is interesting word. I think maybe the first, maybe people's go-to word when they hear выводы is maybe conclusions, which is just fine, by the way. But, this is about a report. So I think in English, when we talk about a report, we tend to talk about reports. Findings, maybe this sounds a bit more English, if you know what I mean. So we share the findings. I guess you could say for us, we support the findings. But again, I just tend to play very safe with the разделяем and just say we share the findings. Оперативнее и беспристрастное расследование. Again, this is a word they use quite a bit in Russian that you need to sort of be able to recognize. Оперативнее. So I just tend to, again, to say swift when I hear that word. Won't tend to do too much, anything fancy with it. Just swift, impartial investigation into. And then нарушение и злоупотребление. This is like really like bacon and eggs. Violations and abuses. You want to know that as you really want to recognize that as a package. Once again, not really much you want to be playing around with there. Okay, then here I've said, обеспечив при этом. So I think in English, rather than saying, I think we would just say while providing, or while, if you wanted something different from always saying providing, you could say while affording. Now, affording is a very high register. You might be interested to know. Now, why did I say affording? So for those who you aren't British, in the British passport, it says, Her Britannic Majesty, Secretary of State, requests and requires in the name of Her Majesty all those whom it may concern to allow the bearer to pass freely without let or hindrance and to afford the bearer such assistance and protection as may be necessary. That's the idea anyway. But yeah, always remember, like, to afford, to provide. It's a higher register. Who's that handsome chap, eh? Okay. Where are we? Okay, эффективным средством правовой защиты. So again, here I decide, средство is a bit redundant. You could just say, to afford them access to effective legal protection. Okay, then исходим из того, что. So here I've given you, it is our belief that. Why have I said that as opposed to just saying we believe that? Well, you could say we believe that if you were Russian. I just think that when the Russians say исходим из того, что, it's a slightly higher register, it's a slightly greater emphasis than were they to just say считаем что. So if you want to try and reflect that little added nuance, saying it is our belief, that sounds in English that little register higher. Now these last couple of paragraphs, are, this is the, I actually write it down here. This is the classic Russian position on the ME, the Middle East peace process, and never deviates very much. So this is the rest of this text is very formulaic in that regard, okay? And again, you don't want to deviate too much from it. So they talk about, a fair, справедливое урегулирование, a fair or just. Now, for регулирование here, I put settlement here when I did it initially, but actually, one of the comments, I was questioned as the use of what I was asked, why settlement and not resolution. And so I tend to use them interchangeably. But it occurred to me, with the issue of Palestine, one of the very much sticking points, shall we say, in the whole process is the issue of the Israelis building these settlements in and around the West Bank. And it's very controversial, this practice. And it occurred to me that I guess it may be using a settlement here could lend itself to a bit of confusion between settlement as meaning an agreement and settlement as in meaning these sort of colonies, shall we say, that the Israelis are building. So perhaps it might be better when talking about the situation in the OPT to go with resolution, a fair, just resolution to the conflict. Okay, so that only just occurred to me when I think it was Dana who suggested that to me. So I like that suggestion. Okay, so then может быть достигнуто. So what do you do with a resolution or a settlement, whatever? You reach it. Okay, and again, this is classic. So a settlement of the conflict can only be reached на основе общепризнанных международно-правовых norm. So again, universally recognized international legal norms. And as I say again with the asterisk, don't stray too far from this wording. That's what the Russians like to hear. And when the Russians speak, unlike with most delegations, it's the source language. They are your client. They're the ones who are going to be listening in actually most intently to what you're saying, and that's what they want to hear. Okay, принципа двух государств. So obviously that's the two-state solution. You need to know. Okay, and then акцентировать внимание на. Okay, I mean, I guess you could say, to heighten attention, to focus in on. So, but I thought, one word here for акцентировать внимание на, you could just say underscore. We would like in that context underscore the importance of holding multilateral negotiations. Под международной эгидой, that's auspices, okay, under international auspices. Okay, взять на себя. I think here, no, what do you do with a role? I suppose you could assume it, but I think here, generally with a role, you talk about playing. Okay, you don't need to do anything more complex than that. That role could be played by the quartet. Okay, the quartet of international mediators. Again, they all, whenever it's a meeting in the Security Council on the Middle East peace process, it's always. The Russians always talk about the quartet of international mediators. And just FYI, for your information, maybe you're asking, who is the quartet? The quartet is, I'll tell you, it is the United Nations, the United States, the European Union, and Russia. So those are the quartet of mediators. Okay. And as I say, единственный легитимный механизм сопровождения ближневосточного мирного процесса. Again, classic wording here from the Russians. This is just their stock formula for discussing this. And then I for сопровождение, so I've always in the past really gone for accompanying the Middle East peace process, which accompany has always been quite, quite similar, quite a like for like, if you like. Rendering of сопровождение. But then it occurred to me that perhaps, maybe in English, it might sound better to say to channel it. Okay, it's a process, right? It's a framework, and they want to channel that process. They want to channel it, right, via that process. Or another idea that came to me was to steer. You could say it's the only legitimate mechanism for steering the Middle East peace process. Channeling the peace process, whatever. By the way, you'll find that generally the Russians tend to talk about In English, it's always the Middle East peace process, the peace process. I would say actually that the Russians tend to use more урегулирование конфликта, the resolution over the actual мирный процесс. They use both, but I think actually the урегулирование is the one they use more. There was just a second page to this text, just a few lines, just to finish. Okay. Россия как член четверки. So again, that's just quartet. They sort of use those two interchangeably. Sometimes they call it квартет, sometimes they call it четверка. And here способствовать выходу на компромиссное решение. So you'll know that if you watch my longer episodes, the tutorials, I often mention the use of these two words. On the one hand, способствовать, and on the other hand, содействовать. And I like to sort of compartmentalize the two of them. So with способствовать, I like to go with contribute to, and for содействовать, I like to say facilitate. Okay, I just like to keep them apart. There's a bit of a slight nuance in meaning that I like to just keep apart. So here we've got способствовать выходу на компромиссное решение, and I've simply bracketed the выходу because again, I don't think you really need it. I think it's redundant. It contributes to a compromise solution. So I don't need to say contribute to reaching a compromise solution. I mean, you could, but I don't think it's essential. So that's there you have it. So this last paragraph, or this last sort of third of the text, is classic Russian position, as I say, on the Middle East peace process that you really don't want to tinker around with too much. Just spit it out as they say it. Now, what I'm going to do just to finish then is I'm going to give you a readout, like a sight translation of this text, as if I was actually in the meeting, and as if under normal conditions, whereby you'd have the Russian delegate probably rattling off this position, this statement pretty quickly, and I'm just going to take you through it and show you how I would do it. Okay. So, on your marks, get set, go. Madam President, we're grateful to the High Commissioner for her detailed report on ensuring accountability and justice with respect to violations of international law in the OPT, including East Jerusalem. A cause for concern is the information on ongoing cases of major violations of IHL and human rights in the OPT, which negatively impacts on prospects of reaching a lasting peace and security in the region. We urge greater efforts to conduct an investigation and to prosecute the perpetrators, including those involved in incidents with excessive use of force, out with military action. We share the findings of the High Commissioner regarding the need to conduct swift, impartial investigations into all violations and abuses in the OPT, ensuring at the same time that the victims have access to effective legal protection. It's our belief that full, fair settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can be reached only based on the universally recognized international legal norms, the Arab Peace Initiative, and the core principles of the two-state solution. Therefore, we would like to underscore the importance of conducting multilateral negotiations on a Middle East resolution under the international auspices. This role could be played by the Quartet of International Mediators, which is the only legitimate mechanism for channeling the Middle East peace process that was approved by Security Council resolutions. Russia, as a member of the Quartet, is ready to closely coordinate with the key regional players to contribute to a compromise solution. I thank you. Okay, so that's how I would do it off the cuff. You notice I made a couple of, I tried to change a couple of things, maybe made even a couple of mistakes along the way. I think I did say the first time settlement. I forgot to change to resolution. One other interesting thing I did, at least I think I was quite pleased with it in the moment. So the fundamentalного принципа, instead of saying fundamental for syllables, I just said core. Core is a very good quick solution for fundamentalny. Okay, the core principle of the two-state solution. Okay, so I hope that has been useful for all of you. I hope you've learned a few new expressions, a few new tricks for doing this kind of text. As I say, certainly if you work at the UN, this kind of subject matter comes up frequently, and I expect it comes up frequently in many other scenarios, frankly. So it's good to know the Russian positions on that. Okay, well, if you like the video, please do give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done so already, follow me on the Interpretation Station LinkedIn group, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you very soon again this week with more videos, more material, and so on. So with that in mind, hope you all have a really good weekend, and episode 54 of the Interpretation Station is adjourned.